Hello guys, welcome to my channel Lucid Fanfic, and if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. 200 years ago, humanity had witnessed the rise of aberrant creatures they called monsters. In different shapes and sizes born of different causes and mutation, these creatures appeared stronger than humans, causing chaos into society, pushing mankind into an apocalyptic era. Humanity struggled but did what they did best: survive. Soon all that suffering changed when a glowing baby in China appeared. Following this, a chain reaction occurred. As generation passed, more and more superhuman people became common and these powers were the norm. Humanity fought back against the monsters, slowly gaining an edge. These powers grew by the generation, and soon humanity gained the strength to keep people at bay. We called these powers humanity inherited quirks, and the people who could exercise usage of these abilities were called heroes, and those who used these abilities wickedly were called villains. Today, as 80% of the population became more and more superhuman with numbers increasing, humanity was at the forefront, advancing technology and quirks, centering its newly resurrected societies based on these powers, ready to continue on the next lines of evolution. Of course, this didn't apply to all humans. Not all men are equal. I learned this lesson when I was 4 years old. In this world, people have developed extraordinary abilities, and by now, nearly 80% of the population possesses them. These abilities are called quirks. At first, quirks changed everything, reshaping society, technology, and even the way people live their daily lives. But as with all power, corruption followed. Some people used their quirks for selfish, destructive reasons, and society labeled them villains. However, villains weren't the only threat. Not long before quirks became the norm, an even darker force began to rise: monsters. Huge, terrifying creatures that emerged from the depths of the earth, from the farthest reaches of space, and even from the darkest corners of human fear. These beings were not just the usual product of quirked individuals, but actual, biological anomalies, beasts of unimaginable power that destroyed entire cities with a single swipe of their claw. Some were born from the very laws of nature, while others were the result of strange mutations, experiments gone wrong, or even the whims of godlike entities. In the face of these monsters, the line between heroes and villains crossed. Some villains would join forces with these creatures to bring about chaos, while others, heroes included, found themselves in a desperate race to defend humanity from an unstoppable tide of destruction. The monsters were no longer just an occasional occurrence. They were a constant threat, wreaking havoc and testing the limits of even the strongest heroes. The world teetered on the edge of chaos. That was when heroes rose. To counter the rising threat of both villains and monsters, the government established the Hero Public Safety Commission, an organization dedicated to training and managing professional heroes. These individuals became the frontline defenders of society, wielding their quirks and skills to maintain order. Now, heroism isn't just a duty, it's a profession, an institution, a symbol of hope. The best heroes stand as living legends, their names carried in the hearts of millions. For as long as I can remember, I've dreamed of joining them, of becoming a hero, of standing alongside the greatest defenders of our time. But there's one problem. I was born quirkless. Yagi House, home of the #1 hero. Mom, Dad. The excited patter of small feet echoed through the house as 2 children barreled into their parents' bedroom. Wake up, it's our big day. Izumi Yagi, a bright-eyed 4-year-old, bounced on the bed with boundless energy. Trailing behind her, just as eager, was her twin brother. Today's the day we get our quirks, let's go, Izuku Yagi exclaimed, practically vibrating with excitement. Toshinori Yagi, their towering father, let out a hearty chuckle as he scooped Izumi up with ease. Indeed, today, we find out what kind of heroes you two are destined to be. Inko Yagi, watching the scene with a warm smile, ruffled Izuku's messy green hair. That's right, my little heroes, she said softly. But first, let's get ready. We have a big day ahead, and breakfast is almost ready. As soon as breakfast was ready, Izuku and Izumi were dressed and ready to go. Their parents, dressed up, were ready to take them to the family doctor to determine the results that would shape their paths forever. Izuku was first to go. He walked into the room with a plaque titled Dr. Genius. He was then put through a series of tests to determine what kind of quirk he may have. Izuku was up first. The doctor led him through a series of tests, each one designed to determine what kind of quirk he might have. First, they ruled out mutation-type quirks, which typically had visible physical traits. Izuku looked completely normal, no extra limbs, no animal-like features, no telltale signs. Next came physical enhancement tests. If he had a strength-based quirk, it would show in his performance. But despite his determination, Izuku's results were entirely average for a 4-year-old. Then, they moved on to the quirk energy scan. Most emitter-type quirks gave off detectable energy signatures, whether heat, electrical pulses, or some other unique trait. The machine gave a low beep. No. The final step was a vital fluid draw, meant to detect any quirk-related genetic markers. Izuku, ever brave, barely flinched as the needle pricked his arm. With his test complete, it was Izumi's turn. She confidently took her place, eager to uncover the power that would make her a hero. All right, I have good news and bad news. Which would the two of you like to hear first? The doctor asked, having done the two children. After some time, the doctor returned, holding a clipboard. His expression was neutral, unreadable. Silence hung in the air. Izuku swallowed hard. His stomach twisted with unease. Something told him his life was about to change forever. The room fell silent. Anticipation thick in the air as the family exchanged glances. Toshinori rested a reassuring hand on Inko's shoulder while Izumi and Izuku sat side by side, feet dangling from their chairs. For the good news. The doctor's voice broke through the haze. He turned to Izumi, a much lighter expression on his face. Your daughter does, in fact, have a quirk. Izumi perked up immediately, sitting up straighter. Really? What is it? What can I do? The doctor chuckled at her enthusiasm. It's a rare form of telekinesis. However, unlike most telekinetic quirks, yours is different. It works best in close range. Izumi tilted her head. Close range. Yes. Instead of moving objects from a distance, your quirk enhances your physical movements. When you punch, your telekinesis reinforces the blow. When you jump, it gives you an extra boost. It's as if an invisible force is amplifying your strength. Izumi's eyes widened in excitement. So I'm super strong? The doctor nodded. In a way, yes. But only when you're in close proximity to what you're interacting with. You won't be able to lift things with your mind from far away. But in combat, your strikes will have a force far greater than an average person's. Izumi squealed in excitement, bouncing in her seat. That's so cool, I'm gonna be strong just like All Might. Now for the bad news. His gaze flickered to Izuku, who straightened up, anticipation still in his emerald eyes. The doctor hesitated for a moment before sighing. Izuku, I'm sorry, but you don't have a quirk. The words hit like a sledgehammer. Izuku blinked. Who? His small voice wavered. Your test showed no signs of mutation, transformation, or emitter abilities. Your genetic scans confirmed it. You're quirkless. The room fell eerily silent. Toshinori's expression faltered for just a moment before regaining composure. Inko covered her mouth, eyes glistening with concern. Izuku sat still, his mind struggling to process what he had just heard. Quirkless. It was like the word didn't make sense. He had spent his whole life dreaming of becoming a hero, watching, analyzing, and even preparing to be one. But quirkless? It didn't make sense. There has to be a mistake, Toshinori blurted, shaking her head. Izuku should have at least one of ours, if not a mix of both. The doctor shook his head. And normally, that is the case when it comes to kids with quirks. However, very rarely do we get patients whose quirks do not manifest. He pointed to a chart. The bone structure in his pinky toe here confirms it. He lacks the evolutionary marker present in nearly all quirk users. Again, it's extremely rare these days, but it happens. Inko's breath hitched. Toshinori's fists clenched slightly. They both knew what this meant. Izuku lowered his head, staring at his hands. No super strength. No expulsions. No telekinesis. No quirk. Nothing. Bakugo had bragged about his quirk last week, showing it off to the class. Mini explosions crackling in his palms as he boasted about how strong it was, how it would be ranked S-class someday. Shoto and Shoka had followed suit, effortlessly summoning ice and flames. Izuku had watched in awe, eyes shining with excitement. He had thought they were so cool. He couldn't wait for his turn. But now, he had nothing. No quirk. No power. Nothing to compete with. His small fingers clenched into trembling fists. "I see," he whispered. Toshinori watched his son carefully. He knew this was devastating. Izuku had always wanted to be a hero, just like him. So eager, so full of determination. Inko reached for Izuku's hand. "Sweetheart." But before she could say more, Izuku suddenly forced a smile. Small and shaky, but there. "It's okay," he said quietly. "At least Izumi got a super cool quirk that's still amazing. I can help her train." He looked up at his father. "Right, Dad?" Toshinori studied his son for a moment before nodding. "Of course, my boy. A hero is not defined by their power alone. Quirk or no quirk, it doesn't change who you are." His voice was warm, reassuring. "You're still my son, and you're still as capable as ever." Inko nodded, pulling Izuku into a hug. "That's right. And being quirkless doesn't mean you can't do great things." Izumi, still riding the high of her own discovery, turned to her brother with a determined grin. "Izuku, I'll protect you. Okay? If anyone tries to mess with you, I'll beat them up with my quirk." That got a small chuckle out of him. He reached up, wiping his eyes before any tears could fall. "Thanks, Izumi." Izumi suddenly grabbed his hands, eyes lighting up. "I know you can be my sidekick. We'll train together, and when I become a pro hero, you'll be right there with me." Izuku chuckled softly. Yes, sidekick. But deep down, he already knew. Not all men are equal. And now, more than ever, he understood just how true that was. The adults exchanged glances, concern lingering in their eyes as they drove home in suffocating silence. Ding dong. The sound of the doorbell rang through the house. Inko barely beat Izumi to the door in a short race, opening it with a polite smile, only for her expression to shift in surprise. Izumi skidded to a stop, eyes going wide. "No way." Izuku peeked around her, and his jaw nearly hit the floor. "Oh my god. Tatsumaki." The twins' synchronized scream could have easily alerted the entire neighborhood. Standing at the doorstep, arms crossed, was none other than Tatsumaki, the number 4 ranked S-class hero, one of the strongest espers alive. Next to her, Hellish Blizzard, Fubuki, B-class rank 1, stood with her arms folded. Both were legends, and both were standing at their front door. Izuku's mind spun. "Why are high-ranked pro heroes in our house?" Tatsumaki scoffed, hovering slightly off the ground with her arms still crossed. "What's with that look? You act like you've never seen a pro hero before." "It's just, you're Tatsumaki the Tatsumaki," Izuku stammered. "And I'm here too," Fubuki added, but her voice was drowned out by the weight of Tatsumaki's presence. Inko stepped forward with a nervous smile. "Tatsumaki, it's nice to see." "Out of my way." Inko, Tatsumaki barked, shoving past her and floating inside as if she owned the place. "I came for my nephew and niece." Fubuki sighed and gave Inko an apologetic look. "I'm sorry about her. She hasn't changed since you last saw her." Inko chuckled. "No, it's fine. I'm just glad you both came." Meanwhile, Tatsumaki's sharp emerald eyes locked onto the broccoli-haired twins. She floated above them, scrutinizing them like a drill sergeant inspecting recruits. Then, with a smile, she placed her hands on her hips. "So, you're the brats inheriting the Midoriya pride. Good. I have high expectations for you too." "Midoriya pride?" Izuku blinked. "What's that?" Tatsumaki froze for a moment, then turned to Inko. "Wait, they don't know?" Inko sighed. "We were going to tell them later, but you might as well do it now." Izuku and Izumi exchanged confused glances. "Tell us what?" Tatsumaki floated even closer, her presence making the air feel heavier. "Listen here, brats." Her glare was sharp, her tone commanding. "You kids are part of the Midoriya family. Your mother was a Midoriya. And now, it's your turn to bear that torch." Do not sully the Midoriya name. Got it? It should have sounded like a threat. It should have sent shivers down their spines. But instead, here's what the twins heard. Who? Wait, Mom is a Midoriya? Izuku's brain was firing on all cylinders, piecing everything together. Wait, that means Mom is related to Tatsumaki-san and Fubuki-san? That means we're related to them. Tatsumaki groaned, rubbing her forehead. You're missing the point. Fubuki sighed. See? This is why I said you should let me explain it. Izumi gasped, eyes sparkling. So that means I got my quirk from you. Tatsumaki smirked, ruffling Izumi's hair roughly. Obviously Esper quirks runs in the family, brat. But don't get cocky just yet. You've got a long way to go before you can match me. Izumi practically vibrated with excitement. This is the coolest thing ever. Meanwhile, Izuku just stood there, overwhelmed. A family of Espers. His mom was a Midoriya. Tatsumaki and Fubuki were his relatives. And yet, despite being born into this powerful lineage, he had nothing. No quirk. No Esper abilities. Just him. Toshinori Yagi entered the living room wearing oven mitts smelling like roasted meats. It's an honor to have such amazing heroes in our home. He greeted them respectfully, inclining his head slightly. Tatsumaki scoffed, crossing her arms. Look who's talking, world's finest. Izuku swore he saw his father falter, if only for a second. Ahem. Fubuki suddenly cleared her throat, loud enough to snap everyone's attention back to her. Now that the family secret is out, how long are you going to keep us in suspense? Big sis? She turned her gaze to Inko with a knowing look. Izuku stiffened, a sudden, sinking feeling in his stomach. Oh no, I think I know what's coming. Tatsumaki's emerald eyes gleamed with interest as she floated higher, her smirk turning mischievous. Yes, the question we've all been waiting for. She turned her attention to the twins, her presence almost suffocating. What quirks did the brats get? The room fell into a tense silence. Izuku clenched his fists. Izumi's excitement wavered. Inko and Toshinori exchanged glances. Tatsumaki's smirk started fading. Wait, don't tell me. Fubuki's eyes softened slightly as she picked up on the tension. Toshinori, ever the pillar of calm, slowly removed his oven mitts. He placed them on the counter before looking at his son with quiet reassurance. Izuku swallowed hard and raised his hand. I'm quirkless. The silence grew heavier. Tatsumaki's expression didn't change immediately. She blinked, tilted her head slightly, then frowned as if she had misheard. Come again? Izuku forced himself to speak. I don't have a quirk. I'm quirkless. Tatsumaki stared at him. Fubuki's brows furrowed, her usual composure faltering slightly. Izuku clenched his fists and shut his eyes, bracing himself for a harsh scolding. Instead, a small hand rested lightly on his head. Is that so? Tatsumaki's voice was softer. Izuku's eyes slowly opened, uncertain if he had heard her right. He expected sarcasm, mockery, maybe even outright dismissal. But instead, there was something different in her tone. Something thoughtful. I see that's a Fubuki hesitated, glancing at their mother. She wanted to say something to lift the mood, but the word quirkless carried a heavy weight in society. Even she knew there were no easy words to say. But Izuku didn't hesitate. I'm not giving up. His voice was loud, unwavering. I'm still gonna be a hero, no matter what. A heavy silence filled the room. Izuku's confidence began to waver, embarrassment creeping in. Maybe he sounded stupid. Maybe they were all looking at him like he was some naive little kid who didn't understand reality. Then, Tatsumaki did something completely unexpected. She snorted. Then she burst into laughter. PFFT, ha! She threw her head back, arms crossed as she floated slightly higher. You've got guts, brat. I'll give you that. She grinned down at him. You want to be a hero without a quirk? It's optimistic, kinda stupid, honestly. But why not? I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Izuku blinked. It wasn't mockery. It wasn't sarcasm. Despite the fact she was laughing, he didn't feel insulted or put down. Before he could process it further, Tatsumaki suddenly turned to his sister. And what about you, brat? Izumi hesitated under the weight of their gazes. I have telekinesis, she admitted. but only in short range. Fubuki stepped forward, arms folded. Short range? Izumi flinched, feeling pressured by both of their stays. The doctor said I was stronger than any strength enhancement in turn and that I had S-class potential. Tatsumaki studied her for a moment, then smirked. So the bloodline wasn't completely wasted after all. The word struck Izuku like a blow to the stomach. He pretended not to hear it, but in that moment, out of the corner of his eye, he caught something strange. Tatsumaki's expression hadn't changed, but she dragged a single finger across her neck, a quick, casual motion. Then, for just a second, she glanced at Toshinori. Izuku felt his stomach drop. I think I need to pray for Dad. Toshinori stiffened under Tatsumaki's gaze, then, without a word, quickly retreated to the kitchen. Smart move. Before Izuku could process what just happened, the doorbell rang again. More guests arrived. Sarahiko Torino and Chiyo Shuzenji, better known to the world as Grand Torino and Recovery Girl. Oh, what's this? A Midoriya family reunion? Sarahiko cackled as he stepped inside, hands tucked into his coat pockets. Didn't expect to see a couple of S-class brats in this house. Recovery Girl gave a tired sigh. Now, Sarahiko, don't start any trouble. I came to enjoy a good meal. Uncle Sora, Aunt Chiyo, Izumi screamed as she barreled at them for a hug. The house quickly became livelier, the air filled with chatter and laughter. Toshinori finished up in the kitchen, plates and dishes soon filling the table. Izuku could only watch as his peaceful night slipped away. The food was served. Conversations grew louder. Tatsumaki started bickering with Sarahiko. Fubuki attempted to maintain order but was constantly overshadowed. Inko happily welcomed everyone, and Toshinori, who looked exhausted, kept the food coming. Izuku sighed. He had a feeling he wouldn't be getting any rest until very, very late. The Midoriya twins held hands as they walked into the classroom, eyes wide with excitement. Today was their first day back in pre-K, and both were eager to make friends. The moment they stepped inside, a buzz of whispers spread through the room. Hey, it's the Yagi twins, some kids murmured. Their mom is super nice. At the center of the room stood a familiar ash-blonde boy, Katsuki Bakugo, arms crossed, his ever-present smirk firmly in place. Beside him was his twin sister, Katsumi Bakugo, her red eyes practically glowing with excitement. Hey, nerds, Katsuki greeted, grinning at Izuku before glancing at Izumi. Hope you're ready to see something cool. All around, kids were gathering, their chatter growing louder. Did you hear? Today we're showing off our quirks. Izumi's face lit up. Oh, we're showing our quirks. That's so cool. Izuku felt a slight pang of unease but forced himself to smile. He wanted to see everyone's quirks too. One by one, the kids started showing off. Katsumi ignited her palm with a small spark, but she did so around her body, a unique effect of her S-rank quirk, detonation. The class gasped. That's so cool, Izumi said excitedly. Katsuki grinned, cracking his knuckles. Small explosions popped in his palms. Mine's even stronger. Then came the quiet but powerful duo, Shoto and Shoko. Shoto raised a small hand, and instantly, ice spread across the floor. Shoko waved her fingers, flames flickering around her palm, perfectly mirroring her brother. The class whispered in awe. They have two quirks. Finally, it was Izumi's turn. She hesitated before closing her eyes and focusing. Her body slowly lifted off the ground, hovering for a few seconds before landing gracefully. The room was silent for a beat. Then, whoa, one kid exclaimed. You can fly. That's so strong, another added. Katsumi giggled, turning to Izuku. Zuku, your turn. Izuku stiffened. The excitement in the room faded. Curious eyes turned to him. He swallowed hard. I don't have a quirk. The room fell into absolute silence. The warmth Izuku had felt earlier vanished. Katsuki's smirk dropped. His face twisted in disbelief. Wait, you're saying you're quirkless? Izuku forced a nervous smile, rubbing the back of his head. Yeah, but that's okay, I still want to be a freak? Izuku flinched. A kid whispered it, but everyone heard. He doesn't have a quirk. Another muttered. That's so weird. Is he sick? Izuku swallowed hard. his hands clenched at his sides. Katsuki stepped forward, scowling. That's dumb, everyone has a quirk, you're lying. I'm not, Izuku protested. I just don't. Katsumi folded her arms. That means you're like those old people, right? The ones that never got quirks. Shoto, who had been silent, finally spoke. His voice was calm but cold. You're quirkless? His mismatched eyes narrowed. How are you supposed to be a hero like that? Izuku opened his mouth, but no words came out. Katsuki scoffed, crossing his arms. A hero with no power is just a loser, right? Izuku flinched. That's not true, Izumi suddenly snapped, stepping in front of her brother. Izuku's still amazing, he can still. Can he? Shoto asked. Izumi faltered. Of course he can, right? Shoko? Shoko, standing beside her brother, looked uncertain. I don't know, she mumbled. Heroes need power, don't they? Izumi clenched her fists. Izuku isn't weird as my brother, and he's amazing. Some kids exchange glances, but he's still quirkless. Izuku felt smaller and smaller as their voices grew. Izumi huffed, stepping protectively between Izuku and the others. So what if he doesn't have a quirk? He's still my brother. Katsumi rolled her eyes. Whatever. I just don't get why you're defending him. He's my twin, his Izuku, he's still the same person, Izumi snapped. But it didn't matter. The class had already decided. Izuku wasn't one of them anymore. Before today, they had all been his friends. Now they stared at him like he was some foreign creature. Like he was less. And that was the day everything changed. Boom. A deafening crash echoed through the streets as another building crumbled, its shattered remains flattening the last of the fishmen horde. Their bodies, scaled, aberrant, and humanoid, twitched in the rubble, some gasping, others already dead. Atop the wreckage, Silver Fang, or as most knew him, Bang, stood. His aged yet powerful frame was already relaxed, fists unclenched, the fight already decided. His martial arts had made the monsters meaningless. A few remaining fishmen snarled at him from the shadows of the ruined structure, but they were injured. They knew it. He knew it. They could either run or be crushed under his fists. They chose wrong. Bang sighed. In the end, you chose to be nothing more than your base instincts. And with a single breath, Bang vanished. His footfalls barely made a sound as he dashed forward. Flowing water, crushing rock. He struck the first fishman in the throat. Its windpipe collapsed instantly. Another lunged at him from behind, claws outstretched. Bang moved, flipping the creature over his shoulder and sending it crashing head-first into the pavement, before striking at its head, causing the contents to blast out. One strike. One kill. The last of them panicked and turned to flee. Bang sighed. TCH. He kicked off the ground, soaring over the fleeing monster. A single downward chop to the skull was all it took to send the creature crumpling lifelessly to the street. Silence. The fight was over. As Bang dusted off his sleeves, he surveyed the battlefield. No, the hunting ground. 10 years ago, this wouldn't have been legal. 10 years ago, monster and villain were just words, labels given to threats to society. Villains could be captured, rehabilitated, or imprisoned. Monsters, well, they used to be spared, too. But then the sky fell. A monstrous space invader had arrived in Japan. A being so powerful it had left an entire city in ruin. That was how Zed City was born. The abandoned wasteland, too expensive to rebuild, too dangerous to inhabit. The only thing people remembered from that day was All Might standing victorious, his smile shining as the monster's body faded to dust. Humanity never learned the alien's name. They only learned Fei. And so, a new law was passed. Villains could be arrested. Monsters had to be exterminated. What defined a monster? That was the question. At first, it was simple, anything non-human. Creatures of unknown origins, mutant beings too far from human likeness. But as time passed, the line blurred. Monsters weren't just beasts anymore. If a villain became inhuman enough, if their crimes were great enough, if their actions crossed an unseen moral boundary, they could be reclassified. It happened to people. People who, by all accounts, had once been just like everyone else. Monsters got executed. Villains got a second chance. The pay reflected that. Monster hunting was lucrative. It paid more than villain capture. Some argued it was too popular, that it incentivized killing. After all, restraint was harder than execution. There were plenty of corrupt heroes who took advantage of the system, hunting questionable monsters just to fill their quotas. Bang could name 10 off the top of his head. He didn't like it, but he didn't make the rules. His job wasn't to change the system or redefine its morality. His job was to make sure humanity never lagged behind the monsters. That was why he had his dojo, to train the next generation, humans who could fight back, who could survive. Yet time was a cruel thing. He was 67 now, past the age of retirement. His brother had asked him to step down, to focus on training the young. Even his old friend Sarahiko had voiced his concerns. But Bang's body had yet to fail him. At least not yet. Still, he wasn't a fool. Retirement would come eventually. But for now, he had work to do. He had trained many. Some who became heroes, some who merely sought self-defense, and some who, unfortunately, became villains. Yet he wasn't content. Society relied too much on quirks. Very few people appreciated basic body tempering anymore. Everyone was eager to develop their quirks instead. Even as an S-class hero, Bang saw the decline firsthand. Martial arts were fading. Quirks grew stronger with each generation, and with them, the desire for traditional combat grew weaker. And then, before it happened, he felt it. Bang stopped mid-step. The haze on his body stood on end. The wind shifted. A pulse of psychic energy warped the space above him. He barely had time to step back before. Boom! A green-haired woman descended from the sky. She floated effortlessly above the destruction, her emerald gaze sharp, calculating, unimpressed. Bang exhaled through his nose. And to what do I owe the pleasure? Midoriya Tatsumaki? The tornado of terror landed lightly on a floating piece of rubble, arms crossed. She scanned the battlefield, expression unreadable. HMPH. You sure took your time exterminating pests. Have you gotten so old that a stroll through this dump is fun for you? Bang sighed. I wasn't aware it was on a schedule. Tatsumaki scoffed but didn't argue. Her gaze flicked toward the fallen monsters. Not a single one left? How? Bang nodded. Monsters don't know the meaning of surrender. He studied her for a moment before raising a brow. So, what's this really about? You're not exactly the type to check in on the elderly. Tatsumaki snorted. Elderly? My butt. You're an S-class. You're past the need to be checked up on. She gestured vaguely at the carnage. Clearly, coming from someone as arrogant as her, that could be perceived as high praise. Then, after a brief pause, she continued. But yeah, I have a request. The Yagis were now 6. That meant they were already in kindergarten, yet the name Quirkless still followed Izuku like a bad smell. He had tried to be more than just his quirk status, but no one ever saw him as more than an anomaly. Izumi Yagi stared at her brother, Izuku, with furrowed brows. The other kids were playing, laughing, and showing off their quirks. Izuku, her brother, her twin, her best friend, was different. His eyes, full of hope, watched the others, never saying a word about the ache she could see in him. They all knew by now that Izuku was quirkless. It wasn't just something that was noticed by their classmates. It was becoming more and more apparent in how others looked at him, like there was something wrong with him, like he didn't belong in the same world as them. That thought made Izumi angry. She didn't care what anyone else thought. Izuku was her brother. He didn't need a quirk to be special. But lately, the whispers were louder and the stares more frequent. And it wasn't just the other kids, it was her friends. Izumi, are you really okay with him being quirkless? It was Kitsuki who asked, his face twisted with a combination of disbelief and annoyance. She hated that tone that said he was different. Kitsuki was always so loud, always so confident, but even he couldn't seem to wrap his mind around Izuku not having a quirk. She couldn't answer him right away. She just shook her head, unable to put her thoughts into words. Katsumi, his twin sister, stood by him, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. Come on, Izumi. It's not like you don't see it. Katsumi folded her arms and raised an eyebrow. If he wants to be a hero without a quirk, he's gonna get hurt. No one's gonna let him be a hero. Shoto and Shoko Todoroki, standing a little behind the Bakugo twins, glanced at each other. Shoto, with his serious, unchanging expression, didn't say anything, but Shoko frowned, her flames flickering nervously. She was quiet, always a little more reserved than the others, but even she could feel the tension. Izumi didn't know how to answer them either. How could she explain that to them? How could she make them understand? It all started innocently enough. Concern, really. They didn't want to see Izuku get hurt. Izumi, he's gonna make a fool of himself. Katsuki scowled, his hands clenched into fists. You know what will happen if he tries to be a hero without a quirk, right? Izumi clenched her fists at her sides, looking down at the ground. She hated hearing those words. It wasn't true, was it? Izuku didn't need a quirk to be a hero. But the more the group talked about it, the more they seemed to insist it was the truth. Izuku was just going to embarrass himself. The next day at the park, they all gathered again. Izumi, Katsuki, Katsumi, Shoto, and Shoko stood together, talking about heroes and quirks. Izuku, who had been silently watching them from a distance, finally approached. Hey, Izumi, can I come play too? Izuku asked, his voice hopeful. For a moment, everything froze. Katsuki shot Izumi a look, one that was hard to read, but filled with judgment. Izumi bit her lip. She didn't want her brother to get hurt. She didn't want him to face the reality that everyone else was seeing, that he wasn't strong enough to be a hero. Izumi finally nodded, but she could feel the weight of what came next. The whispers, the sidelong glances, the way her friends looked at Izuku. It wasn't something they could talk about openly, but it was clear to everyone. Izuku didn't belong in the world of quirks. The following weeks were harder. Izumi tried to keep Izuku close, but the bullying from their classmates and even some of her closest friends seemed to escalate. One day, while they were all playing tag at the park, Izuku tried to climb a tree to tag Kitsuki, but he stumbled halfway up and fell, landing hard on the ground. The laughter that followed stung more than anything Izumi had ever felt. Quirkless wonder trying to climb a tree, one of the kids from their class jeered. Izumi felt her blood boil. She ran over to Izuku, helping him up. His face was pale, his lip trembling, but he didn't cry. Izumi wanted to scream, to fight back, but there was nothing she could do. Katsumi, shaking her head, muttered under her breath. What's the point? Katsuki just glared at Izuku from the sidelines, crossing his arms tightly. If he keeps this up, he'll only get himself hurt. He turned to Izumi. You know he won't be a hero without a quirk. He's gonna be a liability. Izumi bit her lip, her chest tightening. She didn't want to agree with them, but deep down, part of her knew it was true, and that made her feel sick. Katsuki's voice rang through her mind, his words too clear. You need to stop him before he gets hurt. And that's when it happened. The others came to her with the idea, suggesting a plan. Let's just beat him up. Izumi blinked, confused at first. She didn't understand. What would they say that? Katsuki grinned, the smirk on his face as malicious as it was confident. If we beat him up, maybe he'll stop being so stupid. Maybe he'll get it through his thick head that he can't be a hero without a quirk. Izumi's heart sank. This wasn't concern. This wasn't trying to help him. This was something else. This was sick. Yet somehow, the others all agreed. Shoto didn't speak up, but his silence was enough to show where he stood. Shoka's face was drawn with worry, but she too stayed quiet. The plan was simple. Beat Izuku up, force him to give up on his dream of being a hero. Izumi's fists clenched, and she could feel the rage bubbling up inside her, threatening to spill out. She wanted to stop them. She wanted to tell them how wrong they were. But as the others looked to her for confirmation, something shifted. Her gaze flickered to Izuku, who was smiling brightly in the distance, unaware of the plan that was being made against him. Was this the only way to protect him? It was early that day, after the painful encounter at the park, that the plan began to take shape. The laughter of other children filled the air, but within a small group standing in the clearing, there was no laughter. Just expectation. Izumi Yagi, Katsuki and Katsumi Bakugo, and Shoto and Shoko Todoroki stood in a loose circle around him. Izuku. He had no idea what was coming. Hey, Izuku, you still want to be a hero? Katsuki asked, his voice casual, but his crimson eyes sharp. Izuku blinked, tilting his head. Of course his smile widened. I know I don't have a quirk, but that won't stop me. I'll just have to train even harder than everyone else. Katsuki scoffed, shaking his head. That's what I thought. Then he moved. A palm shot forward, and boom. Izuku barely had time to register what happened before the explosion sent him tumbling back. He hit the ground hard, the breath knocked out of his lungs. His arms stung from where the blast had grazed him, but he didn't cry. He looked up in confusion. Kakin? Katsuki wasn't smiling. None of them were. Izumi stepped forward next, her hands glowing faintly as she activated her telekinesis. She looked down at her twin, her expression unreadable. Give up, Izuku, she said softly. Izuku's heart pounded. What? You can't be a hero. Izumi, WH. But there was no time to plead. Katsumi was next. Her detonation quirk was like Katsuki's but more refined, allowing her to deploy explosions in space rather than through contact. She snapped her fingers, and boom! A controlled explosion erupted right beside Izuku's head, knocking him off balance. His ears rang. His vision blurred. Give up, Deku, Katsumi muttered, stepping forward. Heroes don't fight with just their fists. They need power. Izumi stood still, her fists clenched, watching. She told herself this was for his own good. If he got hurt badly enough, he would finally understand. You really still think you can do it? Shoko asked, her eyes pleading for him to say no. Izuku groaned, pushing himself onto his hands and knees. He was shaking, his arms trembling from the pain. But even then, he lifted his head, and he smiled. Yeah, I do. Shoto's expression darkened. Then you're an idiot. The air shifted. Ice exploded from his right side, freezing Izuku's legs to the ground. At the same time, fire roared from Shoka's hand, searing the air around him, stopping just before it could burn. Izuku screamed, not from pain, but from the shock of being trapped. He struggled, his small body jerking uselessly against the restraints of ice and heat. Izumi watched as her brother's face twisted, not in fear, but in stubborn determination. This isn't working. Her fingers twitched. Her telekinesis activated. She lifted Izuku's battered body just a few inches off the ground. It felt wrong, using her quirk against him, but he needed to learn. Izuku, please stop, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Stop? Why? Izuku clenched his fists. They were all stronger than him. They all had quirks. And yet, they were the ones telling him to give up. No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't give up, even as his body ached, as bruises began to form, as his lungs burned from exertion. He refused. He forced himself to his feet, his legs trembling, his breath ragged. He wiped his mouth, and he smiled. Bruised, beaten, but not broken. Katsuki clicked his tongue. TCH, you're hopeless. Izuku wiped the stains from his lip, still smiling. Maybe. His voice was weak but steady. But I'm not giving up. Fine, then Izumi said. We'll just have to keep doing this until you understand. But before another explosion could fly, a pulse of psychic energy snapped through the air. Everyone froze. Izumi's eyes widened. She knew that energy, and so did Izuku. A green-haired figure descended from above. The wind howled as a force stronger than any of them crashed down. The air vibrated. The ground trembled. And then, Tatsumaki landed. Her emerald eyes burned like molten jade as she hovered above them, arms crossed, her expression dark. Silence fell over the group. For the first time that day, Izuku felt fear. Not because of his injuries, not because of the pain, but because of the sheer power in front of him, and the unimpressed, piercing glare she was giving them all. Tatsumaki sighed. What the hell are you brats doing? The wind roared in Izuku's ears. The world blurred below as he floated, suspended mid-air by an invisible force. His small body dangled helplessly as he was carried through the sky, but he wasn't scared. Not because he trusted Tatsumaki, because he didn't. Not because he wasn't in pain, because he was. But because he was too numb to care. He tried to speak, his lips parting to say something. But the moment sound left his mouth, the psychic force around him squeezed slightly. "Shut up!" Tatsumaki snapped, not even looking at him. Izuku clamped his mouth shut. The flight continued in silence. His body ached. His face stung. His legs still throbbed from where the ice had once been. But none of it hurt more than his heart. Izumi, Katsuki, Shoto, Katsumi, Shoka. They did this to him. Why? They were his friends. His family. His throat tightened. His eyes burned. But he forced himself to hold it in. He didn't cry. Not yet. He wasn't going to cry in front of her. Then, suddenly, they stopped. Izuku was lowered, not roughly, but not gently either, onto the floor of an unfamiliar house. He wobbled, his legs still weak, but he managed to stay standing. Tatsumaki floated down beside him, arms still crossed. "Sit." Izuku obeyed. Tatsumaki returned a few seconds later, holding a first aid kit. Without a word, she knelt in front of him, grabbed his arm, and began bandaging him up. Izuku flinched. He noticed small things in her actions. Her hands were rough, but they were precise. She wrapped his wrist. Tight, but not painful. She cleaned his scrapes. Fast, but careful. She pressed a bandage to his cheek. Firm, but not unkind. Once the process was done, Tatsumaki leaned against the counter, staring at him. "All right, spill it." "What happened?" Izuku hesitated. "They said they were doing it to help me," he whispered. "That I couldn't be a hero without a quirk. That I should just give up." His voice cracked. "I thought they were my friends." The words felt bitter on his tongue. "I hate it," he whispered. His shoulders shook. His chest burned. "I hate it so much." The words spilled out before he could hold them back. Everything. How much it hurt. How much it stung. How much he loved them. And how much it broke him to know they didn't believe in him. His face crumpled. He tried to hold it in. But then Tatsumaki sighed. And in the next moment, she flicked him on the forehead. Hard. "Oh," Izuku yelped, jerking back. He clutched his forehead, blinking in shock. "What was that for?" Tatsumaki scowled, leaning back on her heels. "Crying about it isn't gonna change anything, dumbass." Izuku sniffled, still holding his head. But nothing. Her eyes hardened. "Listen, brat. You're quirkless. That's not gonna change. No matter how hard you work, no matter how much you train, you will never have a quirk. The sooner you get that through your head, the better." His 6-year-old heart ached. She continued, "People will always treat you like you're weak. Like you're less." Her voice was sharp, every word cutting like a knife. "And if you just sit there crying, waiting for someone to save you, then guess what? You are." Izuku flinched. Tatsumaki scoffed. "Let me guess. You thought someone would step in, that a teacher or other person would tell them to stop." Izuku didn't answer, because she was right. Somewhere, deep down, he had hoped that someone would step in, that someone would tell them to stop, that someone would say, "This is wrong. He can be a hero." But no one did. Tatsumaki stayed down at him. "No one is coming to save you." The words settled like a stone in his chest. She stood up, stretching her arms behind her head. "If you want something, you take it. If you want to be strong, then be strong. That's the Midoriya pride. But if you're gonna sit here crying like some pathetic brat waiting for someone to fix your problems, then quit now and forsake that name." Izuku's hands clenched into fists. His heart pounded in his ears. Tatsumaki turned on her heel. "Get up." Izuku blinked. She didn't wait for a response. With a flick of her wrist, her psychic energy wrapped around him again, lifting him into the air. Izuku gasped. "Wait, where are we?" She turned towards him, eyes narrowing. "You want to be a hero, right?" Izuku nodded slowly. Tatsumaki smirked. "Then let's see if you have what it takes." And without another word, she lifted him with her telekinesis once again. The storm carried him forward. Outside the door of the room they had left, Fubuki had heard the conversation and sighed as she leaned on the door. "You're still holding on to that belief, sis?" Izuku didn't know where they were going. Tatsumaki still hadn't said a word. The wind howled in his ears, and the city lights stretched far beneath them. But his mind wasn't focused on the view. It was focused on the dull ache in his ribs, the sting in his bruises, and the words that still rang in his head. No one is coming to save you. He hated that she said it. He hated that she was right. The city vanished below them as they soared over rolling hills and open fields. The buildings disappeared, replaced by vast mountains and dense forests. And then, a large, traditional dojo appeared on the horizon. Izuku blinked. Who? It looked old, but not abandoned. The wooden beams were sturdy, the walls well-maintained. A tall signpost stood at the entrance, the words Risui Gansaiken carved neatly into the wood. Tatsumaki descended. With a flick of her wrist, she dropped Izuku onto the ground. His legs wobbled as he caught himself. Oh, you could at least warn me before. Shut up. Izuku sighed. Tatsumaki landed beside him, hands on her hips, staring at the dojo with an unreadable expression. She looked almost detached, as though this were just another stop in her endless journey. Then, without so much as a glance in his direction, she turned to him. Stay here. Izuku blinked. Who? She didn't explain. She simply floated toward the entrance, pushed the doors open, and disappeared inside. Izuku hesitated. What was this place? Why had she brought him here? Before he could spiral further, a voice cut through the air. Tatsumaki. It was deep, calm, familiar. Izuku turned toward the entrance, and his eyes widened. Standing in the doorway was an old man. An old man with gray hair, a sharp, chiseled face, and a body built like steel despite his age. Izuku blinked. Then his eyes went wide. Oh, my gosh, it's Silver Fang. His voice cracked as he practically squealed. Fang blinked. Huh. Izuku bounced in place, the pain in his bruises forgotten. His exhaustion pushed aside. He was shaking with excitement. Silver Fang, the Class S Rank 8 hero, the master of Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist, the man who took down 100 Eyes Octopus in one blow. You're real. Fang raised an eyebrow. Izuku, practically vibrating, pointed frantically. Silver Fang, oh my gosh. Your techniques, your fighting style, you have one of the strongest martial arts in the world. I've read so much about you. I watched all of your fight footage, even the unofficial ones, yo. But before he could continue, Tatsumaki smacked him on the head, silencing him. I swear, brats these days are just loud with no manners. Izuku winced but said nothing. Pot calling the kettle black, Bang thought. Tatsumaki crossed her arms. I'm here for the favor. It's this. She shoved Izuku forward, making him stumble. This? Izuku thought, unsure if he was being likened to an object. Tatsumaki turned her attention back to Silver Fang. You teach brats, right? Teach this one. Izuku's eyes widened. Wait, what? Silver Fang raised an eyebrow. You're asking me to train this child? No, Tatsumaki said, her voice cold and blunt. I'm telling you to. Silver Fang gave her a dry look. That's not how this works. Tatsumaki scoffed. Oh, please. You love picking up strays. Silver Fang glanced at Izuku again, who stood frozen, confusion written all over his face. After a long moment, Silver Fang hummed. His Quirkless, isn't he? Izuku flinched, unable to hide the pang of shame. Tatsumaki didn't hesitate. And? Silver Fang studied Izuku, his gaze piercing. Izuku shifted uncomfortably. He knew what was coming next. Quirkless. Then give up. You can't be a hero without a quirk. You'll never be strong enough. Izuku braced himself. Silver Fang smiled. Well, he said, his voice calm and thoughtful. That's definitely rare. And you brought him to me? Tatsumaki shrugged. You're the best at what you do. Silver Fang chuckled. Flattery? From you? This must be serious. Tatsumaki rolled her eyes, but Silver Fang turned back to Izuku, his expression softening. Kid. Izuku straightened, suddenly feeling the weight of the moment. Silver Fang studied him for what felt like an eternity. Then, finally, he spoke. Do you want to learn how to fight? Izuku's heart stopped. Memories flooded his mind. The pain. The helplessness. The way they looked at him like he was nothing. His fists clenched, his chest tightened. And before he could think, before he could stop himself, he looked Silver Fang in the eye and answered. Yes. In that moment, Tatsumaki disappeared. No goodbye. No explanation. No parting words. 1 second, she was there. The next, she wasn't. That brat, Bang muttered, shaking his head. Shows up out of nowhere, drops a half-dead kid on my doorstep, and flies off like she's got better things to do. Izuku sighed. She probably does. Bang gave him a look, but Izuku quickly straightened, trying to act as if he hadn't just been discarded. I mean, not that she's ungrateful or anything, she did help me and heal me and, give me a very harsh but educational scolding. Bang chuckled, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. Izuku winced. Then, slowly, the old man crossed his arms. Well, kid, you gonna stand there all night or you coming in? Izuku hesitated. Then, his fists clenched, and the fight replayed in his mind. Izumi, Katsuki, Katsumi, Shoto, Shoka, his own weakness. He swallowed, the resolve building inside him. Yes, he took a step forward. Bang smirked. Good. And for the first time in a long while, Izuku felt a flicker of hope. Izuku sat on the wooden floor of the dojo, his small hands pressed against his bruised legs. The bandages Tatsumaki had put on him still stung, but he ignored it. His mind raced with excitement. He was sitting before Silver Fang, the legendary S-Class Rank 8 hero, and one of the greatest martial artists in the world. Bang sat across from him, legs folded, his posture relaxed yet disciplined. His eyes studied the boy with quiet amusement. He could see the bruises, the way Izuku winced slightly whenever he moved too fast. But what stood out to him most was the boy's eyes, determined despite the pain. Good. He hasn't given up. You've been through a rough day, haven't you, kid? Bang said, his tone calm but knowing. Izuku nodded, hesitating for a second before speaking. Yeah, Bang exhaled through his nose, then turned slightly, pacing with his hands behind his back. Tell me, what do you know about the 5 senses? Izuku perked up at the question, eager to prove himself. Oh, I actually learned this in school recently. See, he tapped under his eyes. Smell, he pointed to his nose. Hear, he pointed at his ears. Touch, he stuck out his hands. Taste, he stuck his tongue out. Bang nodded approvingly. Good. At least your brain's not injured, he smacked. Izuku smiled, a bit sheepishly, before blinking in confusion when Bang raised a finger. But, Bang continued, as a martial artist, you won't just rely on 5. You will develop 7. 7? Izuku's eyes widened in curiosity. But I thought there were only 5 senses. Bang chuckled. That's what most people think. But a warrior must go beyond common knowledge. There are 2 more senses that matter in a fight. 2 that most never consciously train, yet warriors refine through experience. Bang raised one hand, fingers spread apart. The 6th sense, proprioception. Izuku tilted his head. Proprio what? Proprioception, Bang repeated. It is your body's awareness of itself and others in space. It allows you to move without thinking, to know where your limbs are without looking, to balance, to react instantly. Without it, you couldn't even walk properly, let alone fight. Izuku's eyes widened. That's actually really cool. Bang nodded. It is the foundation of all martial arts. A master's body moves before the mind decides, because their proprioception is honed to perfection. Izuku was already taking mental notes, his excitement growing. And the last sense. Bang's expression darkened slightly, his tone taking on a more serious weight. Intuition. Izuku swallowed. This, Bang said, is a warrior's sense of danger, their gut instinct. It is the feeling that warns you before an attack comes, that tells you when something is wrong before you can see it. Some call it instinct. Others call it a 6th sense. But I tell you this, without intuition, a warrior dies before he even realizes he was in danger. Izuku furrowed his brows, trying to understand. It's the feeling you get when something bad is going to happen. Bang smirked. Exactly. You've felt it before, haven't you? Izuku thought about it. There had been moments, times when he felt something was wrong before it actually happened. He thought back to the playground. Had he felt it coming? He had. He had known something was wrong, deep in his gut. But he had ignored it, clinging to hope that his friends wouldn't hurt him. I didn't listen to my intuition. He clenched his fists. Bang watched Izuku's face carefully. He could see the boy putting the pieces together, understanding the lesson without being told directly. Bang saw the reaction and gave a knowing nod. Intuition is your first and last warning. Ignore it, and you'll regret it. The old master stood up, dusting off his robe. He looked down at Izuku with a calm, but firm expression. These 7 senses will guide you in everything. Martial arts, in battle, in life. We start by sharpening what is already there. Understood? Izuku straightened his back, determination settling in his gaze. Yes, sir. Bang chuckled. Good. Then let's begin. Izuku found himself sitting cross-legged on the dojo floor, staring at the TV screen in front of him. The lights were dimmed, the room silent except for the soft hum of the movie playing. He blinked. Oh, this is the training? He asked, glancing at Bang, who sat beside him with arms crossed. Bang nodded. Yes. Your first lesson is dynamic vision. Izuku frowned. He expected grueling physical exercises, intense combat drills, or maybe even meditation. But watching a movie? That was underwhelming. Still, he didn't question it. He turned to the screen. The movie played. It was an old martial arts film, filled with fast-paced fights, dramatic angles, and exaggerated choreographed movements. Izuku was enjoying it despite that. Then, pause. The screen froze mid-scene, and Bang turned to him with a sharp look. What was the color of the third man's shoes in the background? Izuku blinked. Who? Bang's expression didn't change. The third man, standing behind the main fighter in the last scene. What color were his shoes? Izuku scrambled to think back, mind racing through what he had just seen. He remembered the fight, the punches thrown, the way the camera panned. But, I don't know, he admitted. Bang sighed and shook his head, not paying attention. Again, the movie rewound, playing from the same point. Izuku sat up straighter, more focused this time. The scene played out again, and just as before. Pause. What was written on the sign behind the market stall? Bang asked. Izuku's eyes widened. What? But that wasn't even important. Bang smirked. And yet, in a real fight, your opponent will not give you time to focus on what you think is important. You must learn to see everything. Izuku clenched his fists. Now he got it. This was the training. They tried again. Pause. How many cups were on the counter in the tea shop? Izuku hesitated. 4. Bang shook his head. 7. Again. Pause. What shape was the scar on the villain's left hand? Again. Pause. How many people walked past the protagonist in the last scene? This is impossible. Izuku groaned. His head hurt. Again. And again. 7 more times. By this round, he was already sweating, not from physical exhaustion, but from the sheer mental strain. Bang paused the movie again and asked, what color were the earrings on the old woman in the background? Izuku answered without hesitation. Silver, teardrop-shaped. Bang smiled. Good. Izuku blinked, breathing hard. He got it right. He looked down at his hands, then back at the screen. He had barely noticed it happening, but his mind was adjusting, sharpening. Bang stood up, brushing off his pants. We'll do this again tomorrow. But for now, on to the next lesson. Izuku wiped the sweat from his brow and grinned. He might have struggled, but he wasn't discouraged. If anything, he was more eager to improve. All right, time for the next challenge. A few moments later, he found himself kneeling on the dojo floor, blindfolded, his heart pounding in anticipation. Bang sat a few feet away, completely silent. Izuku could feel his presence, but that was it. The air was still. The dojo, quiet. Your second lesson, Bang finally said, is hearing. Izuku tilted his head. Hearing? Like echolocation? Bang chuckled. Kind of. What I'll be testing is your ability to focus on the right sounds, filter out the unnecessary noise, and catch what truly matters. Before Izuku could ask how, a sudden blast of noise filled the dojo. Izuku winced as a mix of voices, radio chatter, static, explosions, sirens, and even the sound of rain overwhelmed his ears. It was loud, painfully so, like standing in the middle of a war zone with every sound competing for dominance. Izuku clenched his teeth. This is horrible. Tell me, Bang's voice cut through the chaos, calm and unwavering. Which of these voices is talking about the location of a stolen vehicle? Izuku's mind scrambled. The noise was too much. Radio transmissions blurred into police sirens. Overlapping voices chatted about completely different things. He couldn't focus. I don't know, he shouted over the noise. Bang didn't respond. The sound kept playing. Another voice joined the mix, talking about a robbery. Another about the weather. Then another was that someone listing off train schedules. It was all blending together. Again, Bang said, "Listen carefully." Izuku tried. He really did. But no matter how hard he strained his ears, the information slipped through his grasp. Who was talking about a missing person? Bang asked next. Izuku gritted his teeth. I didn't catch it. Bang hummed. The sounds did not stop. Again. Which frequency mentioned an explosion site? Izuku groaned, gripping his head. He wanted to focus, but it was like trying to pick out a single raindrop in a storm. It was too much. He failed, then failed again, and again. Each time, the noise never stopped. Bang never repeated himself. He simply let Izuku sit in the chaos, forcing him to adapt. And after the 10th time, Bang asked, "Who just mentioned an ambush?" Izuku's lips moved before he could think. Frequency 102.9, male voice, north side of the city. Silence. The noise shut off. Izuku gasped, suddenly aware of how much his head hurt. He felt suffocated by the weight of all that sound, but Bang's quiet chuckle brought him back. Not bad. Izuku pulled off the blindfold, blinking up at his master. Bang's expression was calm, but Izuku could tell he was pleased. You failed many times, but that was expected. Bang stood, stretching slightly. We'll do this exercise again. Eventually, the noise won't bother you at all. Izuku let out a slow breath, his hands still trembling from the sheer mental exhaustion. His head ached from filtering through all the sounds, but beneath the fatigue he felt a flicker of pride. He was improving, but there was no time to dwell on it. Still catching his breath, Izuku adjusted his posture, sitting cross-legged on the dojo floor with his hands resting on his knees. His ears still rang from the previous exercise, but he knew the training wasn't over. Bang paced in front of him. Then, he stopped just a few feet away. Now we move on to touch, Bang said, his voice calm yet firm. Your body is covered in 230,000 tactile afferent fibers that are specialized for touch, yet you barely pay attention to what they tell you. Izuku tilted his head. What do you mean? Bang didn't answer. Instead, he suddenly flicked a pebble at Izuku's forehead. Oh, Izuku flinched, rubbing the spot. What was that for? Bang smirked. If that pebble had been a blade, would you have reacted in time? Izuku opened his mouth, then shut it. Probably not. You're too used to relying on your eyes, Bang continued. But vision can be deceived. Sound can be overwhelmed. If you train your body properly, even the slightest change in the air, the subtlest shift in pressure, can tell you everything you need to know. He stepped back. We start now. Izuku tensed. What's the aim of this test? Bang didn't answer. Instead, something hit Izuku's arm. It was light. Small. Barely a tap. Izuku blinked. What was? Thwack. Another one. Then another. Izuku's entire body flinched as unseen strikes landed against his shoulders, back, and legs. They weren't painful, just unexpected. Bang crossed his arms. Identify what's hitting you. Izuku frowned. Hitting me? But I don't see. Don't use your eyes. Don't use your ears. Just feel. Izuku swallowed hard, shutting his eyes. Feel? What was he supposed to feel? The next tap landed on his shoulder. He focused on it. It was soft, rounded. Another hit, this time on his knee. The same texture. A third tap hit his chest, lighter this time, almost weightless. His brows furrowed. This isn't a hand or a weapon. His eyes snapped open. Are these leaves? Bang smirked. He lifted a hand, and several leaves hovered around him, controlled by a light breeze. Correct, but you still reacted too slow. Izuku stared. You're telling me I have to be able to tell when I'm being hit by leaves? Bang nodded. And differentiate them from other things. Before Izuku could question that, the next wave hit. Not just leaves this time, other things. A brush of fur across his hand. A grain of sand against his cheek. Something round rolled over his palm, then bounced away. Bang's voice came again. Now, tell me what was the third thing that touched you? Izuku froze. The third thing? What was the third thing? His mind scrambled. Fur. Sand. Then, his hand twitched. Something round, small, it bounced. His eyes widened. A marble? Bang hummed, nodding. Better. The exercise continued. Again and again. Izuku had to identify everything without seeing or hearing it. The weight of different touches. The way they landed on his skin. The difference between something solid and something shifting. And by the end of it, his body felt more aware than ever. Bang gave a satisfied nod. That's enough for today. Izuku exhaled heavily, more sweat dripping down his forehead. On to the next. Izuku said, feeling confident. Next, Bang said, crouching in front of him, is your sense of smell. Izuku frowned. Smell? Bang nodded. The nose is an underestimated tool. A trained nose can distinguish poisons, track enemies, even sense fear through changes in sweat. He stood up and gestured toward a small wooden box. Izuku's curiosity piqued. So what's in there? Bang smirked. Sense. He removed the lid. Izuku immediately gagged. A wave of smells flooded Izuku's nostrils all at once. The mixture was overwhelming. Something sweet, sour, musky, burnt, floral, spicy, metallic, all blending into a chaotic assault on his nostrils. Ua, what is that? Izuku coughed, waving his hand in front of his face. Bang chuckled. Everything. Izuku blinked. Who? Bang grabbed a small cloth bag from a box. This holds different materials. Herbs, oils, spices, even traces of chemicals. Your job is to isolate one specific scent I name and identify it. Izuku's eyes widened. That sounded impossible. Bang reached into the bag, shuffled it around, then pulled something out. He held it in his palm and gave a simple command. Find the cinnamon. Izuku hesitated. Just by smell? Bang nodded. Izuku took a deep breath and immediately regretted it. The overwhelming mix of scents slammed into his nose like a punch. He coughed, eyes watering. Too much? Bang asked. Izuku wiped his nose. No. I mean, yes, but I can do it. He tried again. This time, slower, careful. He picked up something woody, something bitter, something faintly spicy. Maybe that was cinnamon? He pointed. That one? Bang opened his palm. Black pepper. Wrong. Izuku groaned. They tried again. Find the lavender. He inhaled. Something floral maybe? He pointed. Bang revealed ginger root. Wrong. Again. Find the vinegar. Izuku concentrated, sniffing carefully. Something sour. Acidic. He pointed. Bang showed lemon zest. Wrong. Again. Find the rosemary. Sniff. Something herbal. Deep. He pointed. Bang revealed sage. Wrong. Izuku's frustration grew. No matter how hard he tried, every scent blurred together into an unrecognizable mess. The moment he thought he had one pinned down, it shifted, overlapped, or faded beneath something stronger. His head throbbed. His sinuses burned. He clenched his fists. Why is this so much harder than everything else? Bang finally sighed. I think we found your weakest sense. Izuku slumped. Yeah, I usually mess up at this. Bang smirked. At least you know now. That's the first step to improving. Bang placed a hand on his shoulder. Bang, however, just chuckled. There's no shame in failure, kid. This isn't something you can brute force. Some people have sharper noses than others. And some. He paused, then smirked. Just stink at it. Was that a dad joke? Izuku groaned, but there was a small laugh behind it. So smell's my weakest sense, huh? Bang crossed his arms. We'll revisit this later. For now, at least you know where you struggle. Izuku exhaled, nodding. Yeah, I do. He clenched his fists. Next time, I'll do better. Looking back, this training had been insane. Every part of him ached. His eyes burned from tracking too many details. His ears rang from straining to isolate sounds. His skin still tingled from Bang's brutal touch training. And now, his nose was utterly useless. But despite all that, he couldn't stop grinning, because for the first time in his life, he would be getting stronger, even without a quirk. Happy birthday, Izumi. You're getting so strong. Izumi, you'll be an amazing hero someday. Wow, look at you. The house was alive with energy. Laughter echoed through the halls. The scent of cake and freshly cooked food filled the air, and the chatter of excited guests created an atmosphere of celebration. It was Izuku and Izumi Yagi's 8th birthday. But if someone walked in without knowing better, they'd think only one of them was being celebrated. Izuku stood off to the side, quietly observing as family members and family friends swarmed his twin sister. The attention, the gifts, the praise, all directed at her. He was right there, but no one seemed to notice. He'd gotten used to this. For 3 years now, this had been the norm. Ever since Izumi awakened her tactilekinesis, the Yagi household had forgotten a son. At first, it was small things. Forgetting to make meals for him, leaving him behind during family outings. Then, it got worse. Vacations, events, birthdays. He wondered sometimes, if I wasn't there, would they even realize? Happy birthday, Zuku. Izuku blinked, eyes widening as he turned. Katsumi Bakugo. She stood there, her usual scowl plastered on her face, but there was something different. She wasn't yelling or teasing him like she usually did. Instead, she held out a small bag, her eyes looking anywhere but at him. Take it, she mumbled, a little too quickly. Izuku blinked again. Katsumi was giving him a gift. Wow, a gift, thanks. Kakin, he said softly, a bright smile on his face. Katsumi froze. I really appreciate you noticing me, Izuku added, his smile growing even brighter. It means a lot. That smile. So bright. So honest. Katsumi's face exploded into a shade of red that could rival her own explosions. Bakashi snapped, throwing the bag at him. An explosion erupted just inches from where he stood, sending bits of confetti and air whirling around him. What was that for? Izuku yelped. Don't get the wrong idea. Stupid nerd, Katsumi barked, spinning around so fast her twin tails whipped behind her. She pressed her hands to her flushed cheeks, her lips trembling as she muttered under her breath. And with that, she bolted. Why does he have to smile like that? Stupid, Zuku. Izuku blinked, staring at her retreating figure, unaware of her feelings. What just happened? Oh, she was bullying me again. His heart sank a little. Of course. What else could it be? Katsumi was always like that. Teasing him. Messing with him. It was probably just another one of her weird pranks. Guess I shouldn't have gotten my hopes up. Boom. The doors burst open with a wave of psychic energy, sending decorative streamers and confetti scattering into the air. The room fell silent as 2 women floated into the house with all the grace and authority of queens entering their throne room. Aunt Sumaki and Aunt Bookie. The moment the words left his mouth, a visible vein twitched on Tatsumaki's forehead. How many times do I have to tell you not to call me that? Oh, relax. One-sama. Fubuki interrupted smoothly, her tone effortlessly cool as she flipped her hair, striking a pose as if she were on the Heroes Weekly magazine cover. She gave Izuku a soft, knowing smile. I happen to like the name. It's cute. See? Izuku grinned. Aunt Bookie gets it. Tatsumaki's eye twitched harder. Don't encourage him, she grumbled, crossing her arms and looking away. Izuku wasn't fooled. He'd caught her once, smiling after he called her Aunt Sumaki when no one was looking. But if Izumi tried using the name, call me that one more time, and you'll wish you were never born. Izumi had learned very quickly that only Izuku had the privilege of using those nicknames. Fubuki, however, embraced her title of Bookie with pride. She claimed it gave her a young-sounding charm. Izuku, Fubuki said warmly, approaching him with a small box in hand. Happy birthday. They remembered. Izuku's heart swelled, and he felt warmth creep into his chest. Izuku beamed. Thanks, Aunt Bookie. She turned to Izumi. I got something for you. Fubuki presented a sleek black case. These used to be mine. For me? Izumi's eyes sparkled as she eagerly grabbed the case, opening it to reveal the gloves. I've outgrown them, but they'll enhance your telekinesis quite well. Thank you so much, Izumi shouted, hugging her. Tatsumaki huffed, finally floating over. What? No thanks for me. Izuku turned to her with wide eyes. You got me something too? Tatsumaki grumbled, digging through a bag and pulling out a larger box. Here, don't break it. Izuku took it, his eyes lighting up as he realized what it was. A game console. HMPH. Like I said, don't make a big deal out of it, Tatsumaki muttered, crossing her arms and looking away. But without thinking, Izuku hugged her. Thank you so much, Tatsumaki, he said softly, wrapping his small arms around her waist. The room went dead silent. Inko's eyes widened. Fubuki's lips parted slightly, her expression one of pure surprise. Even Izumi, who had been grumbling quietly under her breath, froze mid-sentence. Everyone knew Tatsumaki hated being touched. She avoided physical contact like the plague, even amongst family. Yet, she stood completely still, her brain processing what just happened. Izuku let go, stepping back with a big, grateful smile. Thank you, Tatsumaki. This means a lot. Tatsumaki blinked. Then, after a brief moment, she scoffed, turning away as if nothing happened. Whatever. But Fubuki saw it. The faint blush dusting Tatsumaki's cheeks, quickly fading as she recovered. Oh, this is gold. She was definitely saving this moment in her memory for later. Izuku, completely oblivious to the significance of what just happened, just held his new console with joy. Tatsumaki pulled him back, and if I find out Izumi touched this thing, I'll make her wish she kept her hands to herself. Izumi shuddered. Izuku, against his better judgment, laughed, and for once, he felt noticed. Come on, Tatsumaki, you gotta calm down, Toshinori pleaded, desperately attempting to control the situation. Please, for the sake of your niece. The moments that followed after the gifts could only be called the Midoriya chaos. Toshinori, visibly sweating and on the edge of a nervous breakdown, was in full-on panic mode, hovering nervously around Tatsumaki, who was already on her third bottle of sake. Miss Tatsumaki, perhaps we should slow down. Shut up, Yagi. Tatsumaki waved him off, her voice slightly slurred but her telekinesis still sharp enough to levitate her glass like it was nothing. I'm fine. I haven't even crushed anything yet. Toshinori's eye twitched. Yet, he was sweating bullets, visibly trying to calculate how much damage control he could do if she lost her temper. If she goes off the house, the neighborhood. Izuku blinked. Auntie's a bad drunk. That thought was terrifying. I'm not even that drunk, Tatsumaki grumbled, swaying slightly. You're just overreacting. Toshinori slaps a hand over her mouth and shushes her. Izuku wonders why his dad is so cautious over her. Wait, are you serious? Fubuki's voice suddenly echoed over the chatter, snapping Izuku's head toward the far side of the room. He blinked. What the? There, at the dining table, sat Fubuki and Inko. Wait. No, not just sitting. They were both hunched over the table and there was money. A lot of money. Fubuki's eyes widened, her professional demeanor completely slipping. That's, how much even is that? Izuku couldn't believe what he was witnessing. His mom, was going band for band with Fubuki, and was winning. Is that another 50,000 yen? Izuku mumbled in shock. Make that 100,000, Fubuki corrected with a smug grin. Mom, where did you get all that? Izuku's voice finally squeaked out, his wide eyes locked on the mountain of cash growing in front of him. Inko, without even looking up, replied casually, Oh, sweetie, don't worry about it. Mommy's got a few savings accounts. Savings accounts. Izuku's voice cracked, his mind spiraling further into confusion. Fubuki chuckled, eyes narrowing. A secret stash? You've been holding out, haven't you? Inko's eyes gleamed with mischief. Let's just say she placed another crisp stack of bills on the growing pile. A mother always plans ahead. Izuku's head was spinning. This is insane. Fubuki's pride wouldn't let her back down. She slammed down another stack, matching Inko once again. Double or nothing, Fubuki challenged, a wicked grin tugging at the corners of her mouth. Inko's expression turned downright dangerous. Triple. What? Izuku's voice cracked so hard. It was a miracle the glassware didn't shatter. Fubuki shot him a quick look and shrugged. Guess I didn't know your mom was this much of a player. Oh my god, mom's actually going band for band with Fubuki. Fubuki. B-class rank 1 hero. The blizzard of hell. And she was losing. Mom, are you really doing this? Izuku muttered to himself in disbelief. Of course I am, sweetie. Inko replied cheerfully, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Can't let Bookie get ahead of me. And there she went again, tossing another stack onto the growing mountain of cash. I see, Fubuki muttered softly, almost to herself. You're not an ordinary woman, Inko. I'm just getting started, Bookie, Inko retorted. Mom's a monster, Izuku whispered in horror. How does she even have this much money? Izuku muttered under his breath, still trying to wrap his head around it. I swear, this house has more surprises than I can count. Meanwhile, the living room had become a full-blown arena. All right, Izumi grinned, cracking her knuckles as she floated a few inches off the ground. Her green hair was pulled back into a ponytail, and her eyes gleamed with anticipation. Free for all, no holding back. Fut, as if I ever do. Katsuki scoffed, sparks crackling in his palms as he crouched into a stance. Just don't get ahead of yourself, Baka bro, Katsumi smirked, hands glowing with tiny controlled explosions. She adjusted her stance, anticipating his first move. Shoka said nothing. She simply took a small step back, her expression unreadable. Her presence was subtle, almost invisible. Rules? Shoto asked coolly. Don't kill each other, Izumi said with a cheeky grin. I'll break the house, Katsumi muttered, side-eyeing the living room furniture that was very much at risk. Feist one to go down loses, Katsuki added, a wicked grin spreading across his face. Let's go. Izumi shot into the air like a missile, narrowly dodging Katsuki's opening blast. She twisted mid-flight, using her tactilekinesis to adjust her momentum, then dove straight for his sister. Katsumi detonated a burst at her feet to propel herself sideways, avoiding both Izumi's strike and a second explosion from her brother. TCH, watch where you're aiming, dumbass, she snapped at Katsuki. I was aiming for you, idiot, Katsuki growled, launching another explosion in her direction. Katsumi grinned, twisting mid-air and countering with a precise detonation, stopping his blast before it reached her. Nice try. Meanwhile, Shoto retaliated immediately, sweeping his arm in a wide arc. A massive wave of ice rushed toward Katsumi, forcing her to react. They jumping me, Katsumi shrieked with excitement. She planted her feet and detonated a series of explosions, shattering the ice wall before it could reach her. The collision sent shards flying in all directions. While they clashed, Izumi zoomed toward Shoka with blinding speed, her fists fired like bullets. Shoka vanished. Izumi's punch hit nothing but air. What? A sudden burst of flame erupted behind her, making Izumi spin around. But Shoka was already gone again. That's Shoka for you, Izuku thought, watching from the sidelines. She may have the smallest presence in the group, but that too is her greatest strength. Shoka was quiet. Her movements were always subtle, easily slipping in and out of sight effortlessly. Even among their friends, her presence could be easily overlooked. Izuku, analyzing this, taught her to use that to her advantage. What th? Katsuki grunted as an unnatural blue fire surged toward him. He blasted over the flame, but the residual cold still nipped at him. Everyone turned in shock. Shoka stood at the edge of the battlefield, a faint blush creeping onto her face as they all stared. Flames still flickered at her fingertips, but instead of heat, frost spread where the fire had touched. A flash of memory flickered in Shoka's mind. Shoka, why do you keep copying Shoto's style? Izuku asked softly as they sat together in the park. Shoka blinked, her cheeks slightly pink. Because I look up to him, she murmured, looking down. Yeah. But Izuku tilted his head, eyes narrowing with curiosity. Do you have to do things his way? Shoka looked confused, her mismatched eyes meeting his. I noticed something in the way you use your quirk. Izuku said with an analytical tone as he pulled out a notebook from Shoka couldn't tell you where. You don't have a fixed side for your fire and ice, do you? Her eyes widened. Shoto's fire is always on his left and ice on his right, Izuku continued. But you can switch them, can't you? Ashoka's face turned red as she looked away. Shoka, Izuku said gently, his smile warm. You don't have to be like Shoto. Just be you. The quiet, gentle Shoka we all know and love. Love? That was the first time Izuku had ever seen her blush so deeply. Of course he didn't understand why. Present. He was right, I can just be myself. Whoosh. Her flames shimmered brighter, yet the air grew colder instead of hotter. What the? Katsuki stopped mid-charge, eyes wide. Impossible. Shoto's eyes narrowed in awe. Shoka stood silently, her eyes focused as she balanced her quirk. A chill spread outward as her flames radiated freezing temperatures. She then quelled the cold flame. Shoka, how did you? Shoto's voice was filled with surprise. I just figured it out, she mumbled, her face flushing as her eyes briefly flickered toward Izuku. Izuku watched as everyone praised Shoka, their excitement filling the room. They are amazing. And he truly meant that. All of them were prodigies, geniuses who figured out so much about their quirks and how to use them with their bodies. He was proud of his friends, but he wasn't part of their world. He couldn't fight alongside them. Quietly, he slipped out of the room while no one was looking. As the cheese echoed behind him, Izuku's chest felt heavier with each step. I'll never be able to join them. And that hurt more than anything else. Izuku walked. He wasn't sure how long he had been walking, only that his legs carried him far from the noise of the party, far from the house filled with laughter that didn't include him. He didn't resent them for it. Not really. It had been like this for years, after all. The bullying never really stopped. It had just evolved. They had gotten better at hiding it. Smarter, more subtle, but he had adapted, too. I have Bang now. You're improving fast, Izuku, Bang had said with a wry smile last week. You'll be doing the physical training starting next week. Izuku had been elated, and yet, after watching the free-for-all earlier, that praise felt hollow. I'm not fast enough, I'm still not strong enough. They're getting stronger, faster, and I'm just. His nose wrinkled. A sharp, rancid stench assaulted his senses, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was far off, distinct and layered, but he could smell it. Ooh! He wrinkled his nose, almost gagging as the smell invaded his senses. His mind, trained by 2 years of Bang's training, automatically started picking it apart. Rust, sharp and tangy, like old, corroded metal. Iron oxide, oxidation in old pipe. Detergent, stale, musty. The kind that clung to clothes left in a washing machine for too long. Soap trash, mildew, something left damp and forgotten. Burnt plastic, acrid, almost electronic. Likely exposed wiring, maybe an old appliance dumped somewhere. A rusted washing machine with a telephone inside it. The odor clearly wasn't natural. Electronics, corrosion, saltwater exposure. His eyes blinked open in realization. Dagobah Beach, he whispered. Sure enough, he glanced up to find himself standing before the familiar site of Dagobah Municipal Beach, famous for being a wasteland of rusted appliances, old tires, and mountains of trash. How far did I go? He sat down near the edge of the water, watching the waves lap lazily at the shore. The distant hum of the city felt muted here, allowing his thoughts to run wild. I'm getting stronger, but it's not enough. Even if I master Bang's techniques, I still don't have a quirk. A cold breeze swept past, making him shiver. He hugged his knees to his chest, his green eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. Will it ever be enough? Something moved. His ears caught the faintest disturbance. A rustle, barely audible, coming from there. Izuku's eyes narrowed, zeroing in on the exact location deep within the rubble, about 13 meters that away. His hearing training allowed him to map out the sound and distance in his mind with surprising clarity. Light movements, hesitant, definitely human. But there was something else. Breathing, slightly labored. Female, Izuku realized, his senses sharpening further. Her breathing was uneven, almost as if she was hurt. Izuku muttered under his breath, his body moving before his mind caught up. He sprinted toward the source of the sound, stumbling through piles of junk. As he drew closer, the scent changed. Faint traces of iron mingled with the salty air. She's bleeding. Izuku's heart pounded in his chest as he closed the distance, his mind already preparing for whatever he might find. They're under the rusty metal. Hold on, he murmured softly. His mind kicked into action. His eyes sharpened, every detail coming analyzed within a fraction of a second. Pink hair. Her hair was matted and streaked with dust and grime, but the vibrant pink still shone through. Stray strands stuck to her forehead, evidence of sweat and exertion. Height almost 4 feet 2 inches, a little smaller than me. She was small but compact. Her frame suggested someone his age, maybe a little younger, but Izuku's experience in analyzing others told him she was likely his age. Arms decently developed for her size. They weren't muscular like someone who exercised, but there was definition. Her arms showed signs of consistent use that built strength without formal training. Not a workout routine, this is product of hands-on labor. Her clothes told him the rest. Tank top and carpenter pants. She wasn't here by accident. She came here on purpose and had expected to get dirty. Dumpster diver? Scrap collector? Then he met her eyes. Golden. Vivid and bright. But what stood out most was the unusual pattern. Cross-eye pupils. Eyes like that definitely a sight-based quirk. Enhanced perception or targeting maybe. Izuku was piecing her together like a puzzle, each observation clicking perfectly into place. Crimson fluid stained her pants. Bleed out cut. Upper knee. She's hurt, bleeding, but it's like she doesn't even notice. That hit close to home. But what stood out the most? She's not afraid. Even trapped under the dangerous rubble, her eyes scanned her surroundings with calm, practiced efficiency. She's used to danger. Whoa. Before Izuku could even open his mouth, she looked straight at him with curiosity and excitement. Her eyes zeroed in on him, gleaming as if she'd just discovered a shiny new part. You're not a local, are you? Wait, no. That doesn't matter, you're here, you found me. She was already talking a mile a minute, her hands gesturing rapidly despite her pinned position. Her golden eyes scanned him in an instant. Average build, not too muscular, still lean hum. Okay. Decent stamina, postures too upright for a normal kid. Martial arts. Izuku blinked again, completely caught off guard. Wait, how did? Minor definition on your arms, say repetitive hand-to-hand work, but they are not thick enough to be purely combat-based. Our hand, you definitely faster than the average kid. Enhanced reflexes. Maybe. No, but no quirk. Wait, what the hell? She frowned briefly, but her expression brightened a moment later. You're training to compensate, smart move. You observant. Izuku finally managed to get a word in, his brain catching up to her rapid-fire deductions. The girl flashed a grin, completely unbothered by her situation. Of course, it's all part of the job. Job? Yup, she chirped, her grin widening. I make stuff support gear, to be precise. Gotta know everything about someone if I'm gonna design something that fits them, right? Izuku's eyes widened slightly. Support gear? At this age? She's not even phased. Is she some sort of genius? Are you okay? He finally asked. Who? Oh, this? She glanced at her bleeding leg. Nothing major. Happens all the time. Izuku's heart clenched a little at that. Just like me. Who are you? Izuku asked, still trying to digest her energy. Name's Mai. She gave him a playful salute. Mai has to. She slapped a hand over her mouth. My hats. Just Mai, she added quickly, her eyes narrowing slightly as her usual cheerfulness dimmed for a split second. Izuku noticed. She didn't say her last name. That was familiar. Got it, he said, nodding in understanding. He didn't press further, just extended his hand to help her up. I probably shouldn't go around telling people I'm a Midoriya either. Nice to meet you. Mai. I'm Izuku. Just Izuku. Mai blinked at him, then took his hand with a grin. Nice to meet you too. Just Izuku. So, before Izuku could say anything else, Mai's was in his face. Her rapid-fire interrogation began. What's your body type? Flexibility? Muscle density? Joint strength? Reaction speed? Ooh. Do you have any experience with complex machinery? No. Wait, what about battle experience? Any history of injuries? Wait, she paused, her crosshair eyes zooming in on his arms and hands. Do you grip things more with your fingers or palms? I need to know for when I... Whoa, wait, slow down. Izuku's eyes widened. She's so close. He wasn't used to people who got this close that didn't want to beat him up. The girl blinked, then grinned. Sorry, I get really excited when I meet someone who looks like they need custom gear, and you hey eyes sparkled, scanning him again. Yeah, I can tell. You're totally a project waiting to happen. Project gear wait. It clicked. She's a builder, a dumpster diver who repurposes old tech and makes things. That's why she's here. Mai grinned, standing up straight. You're way more interesting than I thought. Interesting? Me? Izuku pointed to himself. All right, since you're here, you can help me find what I was looking for. Izuku blinked. Oh, what were you looking for? Parts. She grinned, her eyes gleaming with excitement. To build something awesome. Who? Wait. Less talking, more helping. Mai laughed as she dragged him toward a pile of scrap. Izuku's new friend was pretty odd, and he wouldn't have had it any other way. Izuku stood in the center of the dojo, blindfold tied snugly around his eyes. His breathing was calm. His stance was light, almost floating, with his feet barely brushing the wooden floor. The air was thick with anticipation as Bang stood to the side, arms crossed, observing carefully. An object came flying, fast and hard. Izuku's ears caught the sharp was cutting through the air. Heavy, dense. He tilted his head just enough to let it sail past. Clack! It hit the wall behind him. Metal rod. Medium size. SHFFFT. Another one. Lighter. Narrower. Pencil. He muttered, pivoting on his heel, angling his body away just in time. Whoa! A circular object spun toward him from the left. The distinct hum of it cutting the air was familiar. Izuku ducked low, letting it graze over his head. Frisbee. Clink clink. Two more followed, fast and unpredictable. One from the front, one from behind. Izuku twisted his body, sidestepping one and tilting his head just enough to avoid the other. Two marbles. One glass, one steel. Bang's smirk grew. Not bad, kid. But he wasn't done yet. Thud. A heavier object came next, slower but dense. The sound was duller, the weight more noticeable in the air. Izuku shifted, lightly tapping his foot on the ground as he pivoted away. Wooden block. Bang's eyebrows raised slightly. The kid wasn't just dodging, he was analyzing everything mid-movement. Impressive, Bang muttered, grabbing a handful of random objects and launching them one after another. Bang moved around quickly and quietly than Izuku's ears could detect, not giving Izuku time to breathe. The next few objects came from many angles, their shapes betraying them through the sounds they made cutting through the air. Whoosh wooden boomerang. Clank heavy plastic lid. SHFFFT glass shard. Thud stainless steel kitchen knife. But Izuku moved like water. Every sound, every rush past his ears, painted a picture in his mind. His feet barely making a sound as he danced around the dojo, evading with ease. Izuku's grin grew as he moved. He could feel his progress. Last year ago, this would have overwhelmed him, but now, he was in his element. Whip. Something small, quick, light but compact. Pebble. Izuku turned, raising a hand as he narrowly avoided it. Whiz. Thin, flexible, rushing by in an erratic pattern. Rod with Fabry. No, it's a rope. He sidestepped as it whipped past. Flump. It's different. It wasn't a sharp whistle or a heavy clank. The sound was dull, almost airy. Izuku's brows furrowed beneath the blindfold. The object sailed toward him, light and slow. Izuku's hand shot up, fingers closing around it mid-air. Silence. He stood still, head tilted slightly as he squeezed the object. Squishy, light, minimal resistance in the air. He could feel the fabric compressing under his grip. He smiled. I got it, he said. Soft, light, no sharp whistle, barely any weight. I even felt the drag in the air. I caught the softball. Izuku twirled the plush ball in his fingers, his grin growing. Bang's eyebrows rose slightly as Izuku pulled off the blindfold, revealing the small plush ball in his grasp. Well, I'll be damned, Bang muttered, arms crossed, a proud smirk forming. Izuku wiped the sweat from his brow, his grin widening. Before, he wouldn't have been able to tell the difference between a flying metal rod and a pillow. But now, good job, Bang said finally, his gruff voice breaking the silence. You've done well, Izuku. Izuku's eyes lit up as he turned to Bang, his chest swelling with pride. Does that mean? Bang gave a rare approving nod. Yes, you've graduated from sensory training. Yes, he pumped his fist in the air, a bright grin stretching across his face. But Bang's next words brought him back down to earth. Don't get too excited, kid, Bang said, his expression serious. Graduation doesn't mean you stop. Izuku blinked, his smile fading a little as he tilted his head. Bang walked closer, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder, grounding the boy. Listen carefully, Izuku. His voice was low, but there was a weight to it that made Izuku pay attention immediately. You've sharpened your senses in 2 years to a level most adults, even heroes, would struggle to achieve. But Bang's eyes narrowed slightly. No matter how good you get, there's always room for improvement. Izuku's expression turned serious. A martial artist, Bang continued, is never content. The moment you think you've learned everything is the moment you stop growing. Izuku's heart pounded in his chest. You must keep training, even after you master something, Bang warned. Complacency is your enemy. Always strive to be better. Bang's grip on his shoulder tightened slightly. Understand? Never be content, always seek to be better. Izuku clenched his fists. A fire lit up inside him, his resolve growing with every word. Understood, Bang-sensei. Good. A wry smile tugged at the corner of Bang's lips, though it was gone as quickly as it came. His lips quirked up into a slight smack. Because now we're moving to the next phase. Izuku's excitement returned instantly. Next phase. Bang turned, his hands behind his back as he slowly walked to the center of the dojo. Sensory awareness is only useful if your body can keep up with it, he began. Now that you can see the attacks, it's time to learn how to dodge them. Izuku's eyes widened in excitement. So we're doing dodge training? Bang turned back, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of seriousness and amusement. That's right. Defense is the best offense. Izuku tilted his head, confused. But shouldn't I be learning how to attack too? HMPH. Any old fool can throw a punch, Bang said with a dismissive wave of his hand. Even a child knows how to swing their fists. His eyes narrowed. But not everyone can react to one, let alone dodge one. Izuku's eyebrows furrowed. Dodging isn't just about avoiding attacks, Izuku. Bang's voice dropped, his tone filled with wisdom. It's about control. Control over yourself, control over space, control over your opponent. Izuku's breath hitched. Bang continued. When you dodge properly, you dictate the flow of the fight. You force your opponent to overextend, to lose their balance, to move incorrectly, and that's when you strike. Izuku's eyes widened, the gears in his young mind turning rapidly. Controlling space. There was definitely something appealing about what was said, but Bang raised an eyebrow. What's wrong? Izuku glanced down, fidgeting slightly. When do I learn to fight back? Bang's lips curled into a sly grin. When you're ready. Izuku's expression fell slightly. Oh, grumbling already? Bang teased. Izuku huffed but didn't argue. He respected Bang too much to complain. Patience, boy. Bang put a hand on his head. You need a strong defense before you can even think about offense. If you can't dodge properly, you'll never land a clean hit in the first place. Movement and awareness come first. Everything else is secondary. Izuku exhaled, his frustration melting away. You're right, Master Bang. He straightened up, his eyes filled with resolve. I'll learn to dodge first. Bang's smirk returned as he cracked his knuckles. Good, his eyes gleamed with mischief. Want to see something cool, kid? Izuku blinked, tilting his head. Who? What? Before he could finish, Bang grabbed a full basin of water and gently placed it on his own head. Bang leapt onto a long, thin wooden pole, one barely wide enough to fit the ball of his foot, and balanced effortlessly on one leg. Izuku's jaw nearly hit the floor. How? Bang stood completely still for a moment, as if testing his balance. Then, without warning, he moved. His right fist shot forward in a sharp punch, followed by a swift roundhouse kick behind him, high kick in front. He transitioned between standing on his right and left foot, never missing a beat. Each strike was fast and ferocious. His body twisted and turned with vigor, executing a perfect pattern of punches, kicks, and body twists. Yet, not a single drop of water spilled. Not even a wobble. Izuku stared, wide-eyed. His heart pounded as he watched Bang's movements. Aggressive, sharp, controlled. It was different. His movements weren't just sharp, they were ruthless. His form was aggressive, harsh, and a little out of character considering Bang's usual style. Bang finally stopped, landing softly on the ground without disturbing the basin. He lifted it off his head and held it out to Izuku. Not bad for an old man. Bang said with a smack, not even out of breath. Izuku's mouth hung open. Awesome. Bang chuckled, placing the basin aside. What I just showed you, he said, isn't simply strength or speed. His gaze sharpened. It's about control. Control over your body, your movements, and most importantly, balance. Izuku nodded, eyes gleaming with excitement. Bang's smirk widened. Exactly. Now, it's your turn. Izuku blinked. Wait, what? Before he could react, Bang tossed a small, flat stone at him. Izuku barely managed to catch it. Put that on your head. Izuku hesitated. Why? Bang's grin turned wicked. Because if it falls, I double your training. Izuku stiffened. Oh no. Izuku's schedule changed from there on. Mondays, balance. He practiced tightrope walking, gymnastics, and simulations of moving across shaky bridges, each one more unstable than the last. The goal? Maintain perfect control no matter the conditions. Tuesdays, park hour. Free running through a 7-meter-high, 3-kilometer-long obstacle course. Vaulting, climbing, flipping, and honing his agility and spatial awareness. Wednesdays, intuition. Shirtless, Izuku stood for hours, learning to feel the slightest changes in the atmosphere. Temperature shifts, vibrations, even the faintest breeze. The human body has around 4 million touch receptors covering the body. The hand only contained about 100,000 nerves. Touch wasn't just about hands, it was about the entire body. Thursdays, evasion. Blindfolded once again, Izuku dodged high-speed projectiles within a small area. The margin for error was thin, pushing his reaction time to its limits. Fridays, calisthenics. Advanced bodyweight exercises designed to build raw strength, toughness, and flexibility. Push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, horse stance, planks, and more. Each set more grueling than the last. Saturdays, reflex training. Imagine that carnival game where objects drop and you have to catch them. Izuku did that, on steroids. Dozens of heavy objects fell quickly at random intervals, and he had milliseconds to react, catching them all without fail. Sundays, rest. The most important type of training, and often the most neglected. But rest didn't mean laziness. Izuku studied with Bang, learning knowledge that would give him an edge academically and mentally. Each day brought its own hellish challenge, but Izuku faced them all with unwavering determination. Because one advice echoed in his mind. No one will come to save you. You're responsible for your own being. So, this was the end of part 1 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.